Welcome to Cine Pro, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The movie Abigail begins with criminals kidnap a young girl to take her ransom, but they are shocked when they find out that she is a very dangerous vampire, 400 years old. Late at night, a girl named Abigail is dancing on stage, which has no audience present, and at the same time, a group of criminals attack Abigail's house. The hacker turns off all the cameras in the house, and the sniper goes up to the top of the house to monitor the place. After the show ends, Abigail leaves and gets into her very expensive car with the driver. They don't notice that a tracking device has been placed under the car by criminals. The gang realizes they've moved, and 3 of the criminals sneak into Abigail's house, specifically into her room, hiding behind the furniture. One of the gang members discovers their plan to kidnap a child and objects, wanting to leave. However, they threaten her and convince her to continue with the mission because of the large sum of money they'll receive. She decides to go along with it. When Abigail returns home, she's on a phone call and lies down on her bed. She senses something strange in the room, ends the call, and suddenly finds the criminals attacking her. One of them tries to grab her, but she stabs him in the hand with a pencil, injuring him. Another gang member grabs her, and when the injured one attempts to hit the child, the woman with them stops him and calms him down. They inject Abigail with a sedative and put her in a bag. Meanwhile, another gang member warns the group inside the house that the child's father's car has arrived. The gang escapes through the garden. Suddenly, the alarm goes off as they're fleeing. They run quickly out of the house, get into their car with their accomplices, and manage to escape before being caught. On the road, they check Abigail's pulse to ensure she's still alive and are relieved to find she is. They encounter a traffic light ahead, and the driver stops. A large truck passes by, but they manage to cross the intersection without being seen. When they arrive at their destination, it turns out to be an old, abandoned mansion outside the city. They meet Lambert, the man who ordered them to kidnap the child in exchange for money. Lambert instructs them to take Abigail to one of the rooms and tie her up. He then lays down the rules. No one is to reveal their real name or personal stories, no fighting among themselves, and they must stay with the child for 24 hours until her father transfers $50 million to them. He doesn't disclose the identity of the child's father. Lambert collects all their phones to prevent any tracking and assigns each of them a fake name: Frank, Joey, Dean, Sammy, Rickles, and the last one, Peter. They all start enjoying the drinks in the house. Dean asks Joey for some candy, but she refuses. Dean suggests a game to try to uncover everyone's true identity, but fails, prompting Joey to laugh at him and call him stupid. She tells the others she can figure out their identities and truths through body language, posture, and clothing, but only for a price. They all put up money, and Joey begins analyzing them. She deduces that Frank was a detective. Peter was bullied for his stupidity. Sammy is a hacker from a wealthy family, but works with them for the thrill. Rickles is a former Navy sniper, and Dean is a professional driver. They are all impressed by her accuracy, except for Frank, who tells Joey she's a recovering addict because she hasn't drunk anything since they arrived and has been eating a lot of candy. Joey gets upset and leaves to check on Abigail. Abigail asks Joey to remove the blindfold covering her eyes because it's hurting her. Joey covers her own face and removes the blindfold. Abigail also asks her to loosen the handcuffs because they're too tight, and Joey obliges. Abigail starts crying, asking what they plan to do with her. Joey reassures her that they won't harm her and are just waiting for the money from her father. To further comfort Abigail, Joey mentions she has a child of the same age. Abigail then tells her they've kidnapped the wrong person because her father doesn't care about her at all. Joey gets up to leave, not wanting to hear more, but Abigail stops her and apologizes for what will happen to them because of her father. Joey goes back downstairs to Frank, telling him that the child's father might be powerful and could kill them all, as Abigail suggested. Frank dismisses this, saying the child is just trying to manipulate her into helping her escape. Frank goes upstairs to question Abigail about her father. When he enters, he notices the blindfold is no longer on her face. He quickly covers his own face and points his gun at the child, asking her to describe the color of his eyes to ensure she hasn't seen him. Terrified, Abigail says she doesn't know and hasn't seen his face. Frank asks her who her father is. At first, Abigail hesitates, scared to answer, but eventually reveals that her father is someone named Christophe Lazar. Frank is shocked upon hearing the name. He immediately goes downstairs, gathers his belongings, and informs the group that he won't continue with this mission, refusing to risk his life. When asked what he learned from the child and why he's so scared, he tells them that the child's father is Christophe Lazar, the world's most powerful mafia boss and the ruler of the entire criminal underworld. Rickles and Joey manage to calm him down and convince him to stay. They begin monitoring all the areas around the house and ensure all doors are locked. Later, Joey explores the house and comes across a room filled with books, which turns out to be the mansion's library. She notices a hole in the ceiling letting in light from outside. As she leaves the room, she encounters Rickles, who seems to be attracted to her. He tells her he doesn't trust anyone in the group and suggests they stick together and escape if they find a way out. Joey agrees to team up with him. Meanwhile, Sammy discovers a room with an old television. She turns it on, lies down on the bed behind her, and is startled by a terrifying figure standing behind her. It turns out to be Dean playing a prank on her. Sammy curses at him and tells him to leave the room and never come back. After leaving, Dean finds Peter asleep and draws on his face before continuing to explore the house. He enters a corridor filled with old photos of a young girl with her father. The girl resembles Abigail. Dean continues his way to the ground floor where the kitchen is located. He searches the fridge for food and suddenly notices a door behind him opening on its own. Naturally, Dean is scared and approaches the door, calling out to see if anyone is inside. Suddenly, something lunges at him from the room, startling him. As he tries to leave, the creature grabs his leg, but its appearance remains unseen. This creature keeps screaming for Dean and trying to call for help. At the same time, Sammy hears the screaming and rushes to the kitchen, finding Dean sitting on a chair. As she approaches him, Dean's head suddenly falls into her hands. When the gang arrives at the kitchen and sees what has happened, they all agree that Sammy couldn't have done it and that something else must have caused it. Rickles then tells them the story of Christophe Lazar's hitman, Valdez, who was arrested 3 years ago along with key members of Christophe's gang. They were taken into intelligence custody for interrogation. The day before the gang members were supposed to appear in court, intelligence agents discovered that all of them had been killed, their heads severed. The group becomes worried about the child, Abigail, and rush to check on her. They find her sleeping with no one around. As they leave her room, Rickles confesses his fear of Valdez and decides to leave immediately. However, when he tries to open the door, they are all shocked to find another door locked with iron bars. Peter attempts to break it, but the door is too strong. The banging on the iron door activates the security system, and iron bars descend over all the windows, trapping them inside the house for a full 24 hours. Rickles quickly runs to retrieve his sniper rifle, but finds it missing. Joey goes to Abigail's room and asks her if she has seen anyone else in the house, reassuring her not to be afraid and to tell the truth. Abigail claims she hasn't seen anyone, but warns that if she reveals the person's identity, they will kill her. She identifies the person as Frank, saying he is Valdez and that he used to work with her father when he was in her room. Joey rushes out of the room and meets Rickles, who tells her that everything happening to them doesn't make sense and that they need to find a way out quickly before they die. Joey tells him she'll figure something out, but as she walks away, she suddenly notices Rickles standing still. She approaches him to check on him and finds part of his face eaten away. He collapses to the ground. Joey quickly raises her weapon toward everyone present and informs them that Frank is Valdez, responsible for Rickles and Dean's deaths, and that she learned this from Abigail. However, Frank denies everything, claiming he doesn't know who Valdez is and accusing Abigail of manipulating them to turn against each other. Suddenly, Frank raises his weapon at Joey, insisting he isn't Valdez and won't let her kill him. Frank orders Peter to go to the girl's room and kill her. Peter rushes to Abigail's room, but before he can shoot her, Joey enters, disarms him, and hits him. Frank and Sammy arrive in the room, and Frank threatens Joey with his weapon, forcing her to release Peter. Joey grabs her weapon, and they threaten each other. Meanwhile, Abigail frees herself from her handcuffs, stands on the bed, performs a ballet move, and hides her face. When she reveals it, they are shocked to see her face has transformed. She is a vampire. Abigail lunges at Peter, attempting to bite him, but Frank shoots her in the head. Abigail falls to the ground, but suddenly gets back up, the gunshot wound healed. Joey shoots at her again, and the group flees the room, locking the door behind them. They realize Abigail is Valdez. They check the doors and windows again, finding them still locked with no escape. Sammy tells them she needs access to the house's power generator to disable the iron barriers. They decide to gather items to fight the vampire. Sammy gets garlic, Peter grabs a pool cue, and Frank sharpens a wooden stake. Joey refuses to join them, doubting they can defeat Abigail with these tools. Frank, Sammy, and Peter return to Abigail's room, finding it empty. They hear music coming from another room and follow the sound, discovering Abigail in a dress, dancing ballet with Dean's headless body. Sammy attacks her, but Abigail strikes her, taking the garlic and sniffing it before hitting Sammy. Frank tries to defend Sammy, but Abigail overpowers him, knocking him to the ground. When Peter approaches to fight her, she knocks him down as well and takes the cross from his necklace, using it to stab him in the chest repeatedly, puncturing his chest. Frank attempts to stab her with his wooden stake, but Abigail grabs it and stabs him in the leg. The group retreats to Joey, who helps them and reminds them about the sedative-filled syringe, the only thing that might work on Abigail. They agree to split up and search for the girl, planning to alert each other via earpieces or by shouting. Sammy enters a hallway filled with spiders and bats, becoming scared and retreating backward until she falls into a swimming pool filled with corpses. She screams as she navigates through the bodies and manages to get out. Meanwhile, Peter encounters Abigail and runs, shouting through the earpiece that she's chasing him. Abigail chases him while dancing ballet. Suddenly, a door opens in front of Peter, causing him to collide with it and fall down a staircase. Frank emerges from the door and tries to run, but Abigail pushes him down the stairs as well. She descends after him, attempting to strangle him. Joey seizes the opportunity to inject Abigail with the sedative, but Abigail pushes Joey's hand away, causing the syringe to fall into a locked iron gate. Sammy pulls Abigail off Frank, but Abigail bites Sammy's arm. Abigail then grabs Frank by the leg and starts flying with him into the air. Suddenly, Peter jumps on Abigail, managing to restrain her. Joey retrieves the syringe, runs toward Abigail, and they inject her with a sedative, putting her to sleep. Sammy tells the group she feels strange where she was bitten and asks if she will turn into a vampire like Abigail. The group doesn't know how to answer. After a while, Abigail wakes up, now locked in an iron cage. Joey tells her that if she reveals the escape route, they will let her out of the cage. Abigail confesses that Lambert worked with her and that she was the one who brought them to the house. She begins to reveal personal details about each of their lives. Sonny began her hacking career by stealing money from her family's bank accounts. Before that, she thought of advancing by stealing accounts belonging to their mafia in the bank. Peter, on the other hand, was the most important member of the guard for a dangerous criminal family that competed with them. He eliminated a large number of their mafia members. He was also constantly bullied for his apparent foolishness. Frank infiltrated their mafia, pretending to be one of them. Eventually, he left the police force and became a criminal just like them. Lastly, Joey was a former military doctor who was fired from her job due to her addiction to alcohol. She left her son with his father and never thought of contacting him again. Previously, she performed a dangerous operation on a criminal who was part of their gang. She informed them that everyone present had done something to upset her father, Lazar. She explained that they only brought people who had angered him. Abigail then made them an offer, saying that if they released her, she would let 2 of them live. Frank became upset and told them they needed to get rid of her. However, Joey calmed him down and told him to wait until they left the place. Abigail then made another offer, saying she would let the one who freed her from the cage live. Peter apologizes to them, grabs his weapon, and approaches the cage to open it for Abigail. Joey shoots Peter in the side, takes his weapon, and asks Frank to guard Abigail. Joey takes Peter to treat his wound. After everyone leaves, Frank asks Abigail to tell him about the escape route, promising to free her. Abigail tells him there is a book in the library room that needs to be pulled to reveal a secret passage. Frank thanks her but leaves without opening the cage. Abigail reminds him of his promise and how he didn't keep it. Suddenly, she breaks the cage door, jumps on him, and attacks him. At that moment, Joey arrives in the room and breaks a window, allowing sunlight to enter. This weakens Abigail, who runs into the shadows to recover. Joey takes Frank and escapes to the library room, where they all sit under the open window, letting sunlight in. Abigail cannot approach them. Sammy appears fine, standing in the sunlight. Frank attempts to pull the book Abigail mentioned, but the door doesn't open. Joey notices a wooden wall and suspects it's the escape route. She tries to break it, but fails. Joey eats her last piece of candy and begins to feel anxious. She accuses Sammy of abandoning her son because she was trying to overcome her addiction. Joey says she planned to use the money from this operation to take her son and start a new life together. Sammy tells them they can't just sit there because everyone has families who want to see them. They need to find the power generator in the place. The group splits into 2. Sammy and Peter go together, while Frank and Joey team up. Meanwhile, Abigail plays a music record and begins to control Sammy, who quickly turns into a vampire and attacks Peter, eating his flesh with delight. Abigail dances, controlling Sammy like a puppet. Frank and Joey arrive at the scene and find Sammy sitting on the ground near Peter's body, pretending to cry. Suddenly, Sammy rises, and Abigail reveals she is controlling her. Frank and Joey run to the library as the sunlight weakens. Sammy enters the room, ready to attack them. Joey grabs a tray and reflects sunlight onto Sammy, causing her body to explode. A secret door in the library opens behind them. They suspect it's a trap, but eventually enter. They walk until they find a room with 6 camera recordings. Inside, they find Lambert, who had been watching everything through the cameras. Lambert reveals he is also a vampire. He grabs Joey by the neck and begins explaining to Frank how Abigail turned him into a vampire 2 years ago to help him infiltrate their mafia. She threatened to kill his family if he didn't assist her. Lambert brought all of her father's enemies to this place. Lambert offers to turn Frank into a vampire in exchange for helping him eliminate Abigail so they can rule the criminal world together. Frank agrees without hesitation. Lambert lets go of Joey and bites Frank, then cuts his hand and makes Frank drink his blood. Joey watches as Frank transforms into a vampire, writhing in pain and losing a large amount of blood. Once Frank transforms, Lambert orders him to kill his first victim, Joey. Instead, Frank stabs Lambert, causing his body to explode. At this moment, Abigail arrives. Unaware that Frank has transformed, she jumps on him to drink his blood, but the opposite happens. Frank drinks her blood instead. Joey seizes the opportunity, grabs her phone, and disables the house's security system to escape. She runs to the door leading to the library, but finds it locked. Frank continues drinking Abigail's blood, draining her energy. Joey tries calling her son, but he doesn't answer. She leaves him a voicemail, telling him she loves him very much. Frank arrives, pushes her against the door, and breaks it, entering the library room. Joey tries to fight him off, but Frank is unaffected. He grabs her by the neck and throws her from a high place. Abigail catches her before she hits the ground and tells Joey they need to work together to defeat Frank. Joey agrees on the condition that she will be allowed to escape the mansion afterward. Frank descends to face them, and a fierce battle ensues. Frank proves to be much stronger than the 2 of them. He impales Joey with an iron rod, pinning her to the wall, and continues fighting Abigail. Frank manages to strike Abigail and drink her blood. Abigail signals Joey, reminding her of their promise to help each other. Abigail collapses after Frank drinks her blood. Frank approaches Joey, bites her neck, and throws her to the ground, leaving her unconscious. When Joey regains consciousness, she uses her vampire strength to grab a stake and stab Abigail. Joey pretends to be going after Abigail, but suddenly turns and tries to stab Frank. Frank blocks the attack, takes the stake from her, and strikes her. Abigail seizes the opportunity to jump on Frank, and they resume fighting. Joey pulls the iron rod from the wall and manages to, and Abigail Frank. His body explodes like the ones before him. Joey gets tense and feels like she's about to transform too, because before he died, he bit her. Abigail tells her that this won't happen, because Frank is dead. Abigail tells her to leave and that she promised her. Joey feels relieved and heads to the door, but she stops and looks back at Abigail, and suddenly she's startled by a hand grabbing her shoulder. Joey gets scared and falls to the ground, realizing it's Christophe Lazar, Abigail's father. Lazar admits that he wants to drink Joey's blood, and before he gets close to her, his daughter intervenes and tells him she saved her and that he must let her go immediately. Lazar grabs Joey's hand as a gesture of gratitude and lets her leave. Joey quickly gets out, feeling happy, gets into the car, escapes the mansion, and manages to save her life. And here we come to the end of our movie. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss an update. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.